This is the sixth part of the interpretation of the psychology of money, where we use value investing as an example to discuss how we should learn from history. When we talk about value investing, you might think of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger had a student named Li Lu, who authored a book in 2020 called Civilization, Modernization, Value Investing, and China, summarizing the essence of value investing. Li Lu specifically mentioned the tradition of mentorship in the field of value investing. The grandfather of value investing is not Buffett but an even earlier legend named Benjamin Graham. Decades ago, people spoke about Graham in a way similar to how we talk about Buffett today. Unlike Buffett, Graham was an academic investor who meticulously documented his investment methods in a book, much like a textbook. According to Li Lu's summary, there are 4 principles of value investing, with Graham contributing the first 3 and Buffett the 4th. Let's briefly discuss these 4 principles and see if you can implement them. The first principle is that buying stocks essentially means buying a company. Investment is for the value of the company, not for speculation. The worthiness of owning a company is not because its stock will rise, but because the company can create value. You, partially, own something that consistently creates value, contributing to the world. According to the principle of private property deserving protection, the money you earn from it is rightfully yours. I understand this as what Charlie Munger calls deserving. You deserve it not because you are clever but because, as one of the company's owners, you are involved in something that creates value. This gives you a sense of security. This is the right path of investment. The second principle is to ignore short-term market fluctuations. The market cannot tell you the true value of a company, it only indicates the current trading price of its stock, often deviating from its actual value. In the eyes of value investors, the market is an emotionally volatile character, sometimes crazy and sometimes depressed. The market is not a good teacher, it's just a tool for obtaining ownership of a company. This principle requires you to strictly separate the value of the company from the current market trading price. This way, you can remain unaffected by short-term fluctuations and focus on the long term. The third principle is the so-called margin of safety. Due to the uncertainty in estimating a company's value, you should only buy when the stock price is significantly lower than, not just lower than, its intrinsic value. You estimate the stock should be worth $100, but your estimate might be wrong, perhaps its actual value is only $70. How to ensure safety? The answer is to wait until the stock price fluctuates to $50 before buying. You might say, is this even realistic? So, in most cases, you should only observe without buying. You need to look at many companies, waiting for a long time. Be patient, as, according to the second principle, the market will eventually fluctuate to an unreasonable extent for a good company, that's when you strike. These 3 principles form a complete investment logic. Graham proposed these over 70 years ago. Buffett contributed the 4th principle, the circle of competence. To reasonably assess a company's value, a value investor must be a polymath, understanding everything from macro to micro, from consumer behavior to technology. You need to analyze things beyond the surface, including conducting on-site research at the company. However, human capabilities are limited, and you can't possibly know everything. So, Buffett suggests that money is inexhaustible, you don't have to aim to make all the money. Understanding specific industries and companies is enough, but don't pretend to understand what you don't. Recognize the limits of your abilities. These 4 principles seem simple, right? Any issues? I see the essence of value investing in these 4 principles in 2 words, picking bargains. Successful antique dealers buy what looks good, buy a lot, engage in frequent trading, experiencing profits and losses, pursuing an overall profit. Value investors, on the other hand, act like people browsing through an antique market, looking every day, asking about prices every day but not buying. Only when someone ignorant sells a valuable item for next to nothing do they decisively and boldly make a move. As the saying goes, with great gain comes great gap. Regarding value investing, I must repeatedly remind you that what most retail investors call value investing is often self-deception. Do you think buying stocks of a company you like and holding on to them is value investing? What about your research? What about your margin of safety? Have you assessed your circle of competence? Can you persist for 50 years? Readers might say, are these principles too abstract? How do I implement them? How do I gauge that degree? At what point below intrinsic value should I buy? You can't discuss effectiveness without dosage, you need to provide a number. Graham, in fact, did provide numbers. Graham's investment method was very detailed, including some specific operational criteria. One of these criteria is that if a company's market value is more than 1.5 times its intrinsic value, you shouldn't buy. This standard is much higher than the margin of safety, which requires the stock price to be significantly lower than the intrinsic value. So, this criterion should act as a high threshold, a strict discipline, right? What would happen if we steadfastly apply Graham's set standard now? Someone has verified this. In The Psychology of Money, Housel says that if you had used Graham's standard between 2009 and 2019, the only stocks you could have bought were insurance and banking stocks. The reality is that currently, there are hardly any undervalued good companies waiting for you to pick up. Seriously, it's the era of big data, any movement in the company is already in someone else's model. Graham's standards are outdated. But you can't blame Graham. In fact, Graham always told the world that his standards would become outdated. Graham's thoughts on value investing were first presented in 1934. In 1949, he published the most famous book called The Intelligent Investor, the first edition. This book refined his methods from 1934. Then, in 1954, Graham rewrote The Intelligent Investor, updating the formulas from the first edition and introducing new ones. In 1965, he rewrote the formulas from 1954. The 1972 edition revised the formulas from 1965. Between 1934 and 1972, Graham updated his stock trading methods 5 times. So, why should you believe that his 1972 method is the final method? The 1972 version of the book wasn't continued not because it didn't need updating but because Graham passed away in 1976. If today's investors still use The Intelligent Investor as a guide, it's like searching for a sword at the place where it was last seen, even though the river has changed its course. In fact, in Graham's final days, he likely changed the fundamental principles of value investing. Before his death, someone asked if he would still insist on detailed analysis of individual stocks, focusing on buying companies rather than evaluating the entire market comprehensively. Graham explicitly said he wouldn't. He no longer strongly advocated detailed analysis of a stock to find supervalue opportunities. So, can you still use the margin of safety? Is value investing outdated? In my view, this depends on how you understand the surface and essence of value investing. Specific operational criteria are only surface level and are destined to become outdated. But do the 4 principles of value investing make sense? I believe they do. You have to see through the surface to the essence of those principles. But the essence is often not very useful. Who doesn't know that picking bargains is good? You tell me the principle, but you need to show me where the bargains are. The wisdom of the world is like this. The useful is often wrong, and the infallible is often useless. So, when you do things, you will make mistakes, and if you want to avoid mistakes, you're left with a sense of moral superiority. Learning from history is about borrowing, understanding the essence, not mechanically copying the surface. But we've discussed in the Scientific Thinking series that there are no absolute, essential essences of things. What is the surface, what is the essence, you have to analyze based on the specific context. Li Lu believes that value investors always make up only 5% of the population, the remaining 95% cannot resist the temptation of frequent trading. Therefore, value investing will always have opportunities. I express sympathy from an intellectual standpoint. My opinion is that value investing will become increasingly challenging and less suitable for retail investors. If you think your time spent on researching stocks is worth more than $1,000,000 per year, and your total investment is less than $20 million, mathematically, I suggest you do something else. How should we learn from historical things? Value investing may provide you with 4 lessons. First, life is not an algorithm, and learning cannot be mechanically copied. What suits Buffett may not suit you. Your times, places, abilities, especially the scale, are very different. Buffett can directly influence a company's operations as a shareholder. Buffett's stock purchases have a Pygmalion effect. These are things you can't replicate. Second, the real wisdom of experts lies not in their use of those principles, but in their discovery of those principles. Graham was outstanding not because he was a value investor, but because he pioneered the value investing industry. Buffett is different from Graham, and Li Lu is different from Buffett. History rewards those who invent their own methods, not those who imitate others. Chinese painter Qi Baishi said, "Those who learn from me live, those who imitate me die." What we really need to learn is not the specific operations of those experts, but the method of finding methods. Graham and his companions found the most suitable methods for the stock market at that time and for themselves, then they had to keep updating. Practice, experiment, trial and error, summarize, update, these methods beyond methods are what you should learn. Third, although many historical patterns change, indeed, some patterns do not change. What we can directly learn from is those unchanging things. Specific investment methods will change, but people's greed and fear in financial decisions, human behavior under pressure, how people react to incentives, these are hard to change human characteristics. This is something you can directly learn. In fact, the greatest benefit of various historical stories is not in direct application, but in improving your imagination. Reading should be full of surprises. There's also this operation. If you can think of various possibilities for operations, that's already good. Then consider probability. The 4th lesson is to consider time. The more distant history is, the more you can only draw on very general, non-specific patterns. If you want to take advantage of a specific trend, you can only refer to recent things. And these 4 lessons are not directly operational. If you insist on what rules will change and what rules will not, how far is too far, I can't explain. I think if you are Graham, you know how to grasp those measures yourself.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.